this for folks. So I like to start on time. I want to respect the folks that are here on time, and I know people always show up late, but I would like to be respectful of time. So you know, anyway, we're getting started here. So one thing, it's hard for me because Kristen just said hi, and hey Kristen, I love to chat more. A little busy right now, but yeah, I can't do the chat and the PowerPoint at the same time. So if you put chat questions in there, don't expect live answers. I'll have to do it, during the discussion period. So anyway, okay, so today, I was going to do like all of xTRAIN today. And then I started like really breaking it down, and I'm like, let's just keep it simple. Let's just do appointments today. And then we'll do terminations next week. We can also do just a troubleshooting session. I wanted to be really thorough, especially with the person that's starting an xTRAIN appointment. It may be like fairly new to them, so you maybe have to go a little extra slow. So some of this is just recap for you guys. I noticed the thing with xTRAIN, it's one of those things you can either do a lot, or you do it like once a year and then you come back to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot how to do this. Hey, Amy, how are you? Welcome back. Anyway.
I'm great. How are you? Sorry, I was muted. Thank
you. You look all well rested. So you can see this is casual. We're pretty casual, informal. I'm not too formal on my presentation, so you guys can interrupt. If you want to take yourself off of mute anytime, and just ask a question. It might be easier than putting it in the chat. So today's objective, like I said, I'm going to recap, always recap last week, what we talked about last week, in case you missed that, the recording's online. And then today I want to talk about those actual, looking up the ERA comments accounts, which is a little trick, to show you the delegation of authority process with you and your PI, and then the actual appointment. So last week we talked about different types of policies. We talked about like degree requirements. What does it take to be a citizen, or eligibility on a training grant? The years. So now that's going to be important when we are doing our appointment, to know if the person has prior NRSA support. So if you recall from last week, postdocs can only receive 3 years of NRSA funding. A pre-doc can receive up to 5. And then MD, PhD programs can receive up to 6. So that's one of those things, those policies you have to remember when you're doing these appointments. Again, we went over training policy, stipend policy, how it applies to tuition and fees, training related expenses, travel, and then of course your payback. So if you are looking for a resource, that is all on the website. So what exactly is xTRAIN? So I'm going to date myself here, but when I first started working on training grants, they didn't have xTRAIN. And you had to do these paper appointments, and the trainee had to come in and hand sign everything. And then you actually had to FedEx everything to the agency. And now, I should say now, probably since like 2005 or something like that. They do everything electronically, all these forms. So it's again different than a research grant, because you're actually appointing them on the grant. And so you have to go into ERA Commons, which I'm going to assume most of you have an ERA Commons account, but maybe you don't. So if you don't, I'll show you how to do that process as well. But so basically all these institutions across the US have to go in and appoint their trainees. They can do this in xTRAIN. They can do reappointments in here. They can do amendments, and then they can do termination, which is something that we'll be talking about next week, is the terminations. So all these forms are just basically submitted electronically. And then the agency staff, your PO, or it's not really your PO, usually it's your GMS, will go in there, review what you've submitted, and then they determine whether they accept it or not. So xTRAIN codes, as far as appointments, these are all the codes that are the funding mechanisms that are accepted by xTRAIN. So the reason why I say that, and then here's the terminations. If you notice, there's no terminations for KL2s or K12s. So it's a bit strange in R25. So they may have a termination appointment, but they may have to do a termination depending on your notice of award, what the conditions are, but it may have to be done via paper, which I know doesn't make much sense. But for the most part, for all of you that are on here, most of you are all T32s, which is a standard. And so those are all of those appointments and terminations are in xTRAIN. And again, I'm going to nail this to the ground is always remember, and we talked about this last week with the policy, payback agreements for that postdoc need to be done. That's a paper, print that out. As soon as you do that appointment, print it out, have the trainee sign, and then send it to the agency. Because I don't know how many times I see, an appointment isn't approved by the agency because they never received this. And a lot of times, I tell you, you send it off to them and it just sits on someone's desk at NIH and nobody ever actually clicks the button in the system to approve the appointment. So, and always keep, if you're sending a paper copy, it goes without saying, you always want to scan that, keep an electronic copy, because they're going to come back and go, we didn't receive this. Sorry, that's my new NIH voice. We didn't receive this. xTRAIN roles, there's a couple different roles. Now, it used to be, again, I keep dating myself. I sound like one of those parents going, when I was a kid, but it really is. When I was a kid, I used to have with all my PIs, they would just give me their login and they would say, log in as me. Now that is really a kind of a thing of the past with that whole secondary login. You have to do that, authentication, the secondary. So really, and I think that was kind of a crackdown for this. So you really have to go by the designated roles now. So you're going to have your PI, your business official, your delegate, which is going to be you, because I'm talking to admins right now. And then, of course, you have your trainees that can go in there and they have a role. There's also different types of roles. There's, like when you submit a grant, like Rachel Cook, she's a signing official. She has an SO role. She has a very, high level role. So there's different types of roles in Erie Commons. Of course, the PI, they are responsible for everything because their name is on it. Ultimately, they're the ones that select the trainees to be on the grant. They have to do the amendments and they have to initiate terminations. It used to be, I could just go in there and do it for them or submit a termination. And really, you have to actually nag the PI and say, could you please submit this? So, I wanted to also point out, if you have an F30, F31, F32 fellowship, sometimes the PI could be your trainee. I know that sounds kind of funny. And then the sponsor would be the PI because they are the PI of that fellowship. So that is a lingo terminology thing that you might hear going, wait, the PI, it's really a postdoc. Well, yeah, because it's a fellowship. And the sponsor would be the PI, whoever's mentoring that postdoc. The business office role, this may or may not be you. This is someone that will be submitting termination notices on behalf of the institution or that department. When you go in and you need to route to the business official, which we'll be doing next week for the terminations, you're going to see a whole list of people from every department on the campus. And so you may or may not have that role. And we'll talk about that more next week. And really, I think the biggest important thing to remember with the business official, because when you're doing the termination notices, is you're telling NIH, we supported this trainee at $50,000 a year. And this business official has to verify that with our, Oracle, our financial systems that yes, this person was paid that amount. So that's the big role for the business official. The PI delegate, basically in general, that's going to be your administration, your assistants. So we're delegated by the PI. We can't we can't give ourselves delegation. They have to go in, and they, meaning the PI, the project director or PI, has to go in and actually give you delegation of authority. So you, again, you have all the same thing. You can do all the same things except to submit those appointments to the agency. So that's one thing that's going to be important to remember, because, you know, like I said, when I was a kid, we could just do that, and you can't do that anymore. So one thing to also remember is you need, you know, as an administrator, research administrator, you need an ERA Commons account, and so does the trainee. So, and then you also have to have this assistant role, and then the PI needs to give you delegation of authority. So it's not as easy as just like, oh, I'm going to log into ERA Commons, sorry, and I'm going to start this. You have to make sure you have the correct role, which you probably do, but if you don't, you know, you can always reach out to me. I can give you that role. And then the PI is going to need to give you delegation of authority. I have someone right now that has a brand new training grant, and that was one of the first things we did was I said, well, go in and give me delegation of authority. And he didn't know how to do it, and he's a busy guy, so I just got on Zoom with him really quick, and I just walked him through it. But so I want to, you know, we haven't even got to the appointment, right? We're just doing the prep work to the appointment. But there's certain things you need to kind of get your ducks in a row as far as the appointment. So first, I like to look up to see if the trainee actually has an ERA Commons account. And I like to look up to see if they have prior support. Now, you can do this when you're doing the actual appointment, but my preference is to do it before you actually go into xTRAIN. And then remember, you'll need to have that delegation. So might go in there and start, oh, I'm going to start the xTRAIN, and go, oh crap, I don't have delegation. So those are these stumbling blocks that you can run into. You're going to need to know certain information, like the field of training, which I'll show you, when the trainee is actually going to be appointed, like what year are they going to be appointed on, and then their stipend level. So I wanted to walk you through it, and I wanted to do this live, but my internet has been like unstable all week. So I thought I'd just do screenshots, because it can be a little bit easier. So this is one thing that I like to show administrators is basically you could go in and verify anybody's user common ID. So you go under admin, accounts, and then account management. And then you just go in here, you be sure you click this search only within the organization, especially if you have a really common name. And then, you know, fill that out and hit search. So say if you put in, you know, my last name, Vampola, or let's say Smith here, this is all the people that are in our organization that are, you know, have that last name Smith. So you can see here, okay, my trainee does have a user common ID, and you can see that's this first, you know, box there. If you clicked on that hyperlink right there, it's going to bring you to this page. And this is where it's important to remember, okay, only a pre-doc can have up to 5 years of NRSA experience, of support, excuse me, and the postdoc can receive 3. So as we're looking this up, I can see, oh, this person already has 2 years of training and RSA support. Now I can't see whether this is pre-doc support or postdoc support, but I can see that, okay, they do have 2 years. So if you are appointing a postdoc to a 2-year program, basically you're appointing them 1 year at a time in xTRAIN, you might want to think twice about that because they've already received 2 prior years. So again, just one of those things you need to think about. And then there's this new feature in here that this information pulls from the employment history. So if, in which I would love to know the statistics on this, if the trainee actually updates their user commons profile, this information would be in here. So this is kind of, I don't know if it's handy or whatever, but since they did the revamp of xTRAIN back in, I think it was end of March, they launched the new xTRAIN. This is a new feature. So, you know, if for some reason you need that in the future, where is this person now or whatever. So again, if you wanted to go in and start xTRAIN, your actual appointment, you can find this information when you're doing it. But again, I being the person that I am, I like to do this ahead of time. So one reason why I say that is because what about if your trainee, I have like a PI right now, is he's looking to select a trainee, and we're in the selection process, and I know I don't want to appoint them yet, but I just want to double check, have they had, you know, NRSA support before, and you could just go in here very quickly and look that up. So say if they've totally reached their max, you could stop the process right now and tell your PI, you need to go find, you know, another candidate, because that person is not going to be eligible. Again, knowing that training grant policy, the 5-year max for pre-docs and the 3 for postdocs. So if you need an account for yourself or a trainee, there are 2 places on campus. So if you're a general campus, which I don't know if we have any general campus people here, that would be the E-rate Commons at UCSD, or Elizabeth Tang, who's our health sciences, who's in HISPO. And this is the information you need to give to them. It used to be Nicole Ketchum. She has been promoted, so she's not in this role anymore, but it's Elizabeth Tang now. This is something like, say, if you emailed me, I can't sign, you know, I can't set them up, but I would just redirect you to Elizabeth, and she's like super on it. So she's very, very responsive. So delegation of authority. So this is one of those things that you may have to walk your PI through when, you know, you're working with your PI. Say you just started working for this new PI. You could go into E-rate Commons, go into admin, delegations, and these are, again, they revamped the screens a little bit. So it's, you know, the look of it is a little bit different. So you can go and search or add a delegate, go ahead and search for, you know, whoever. And then you'll see, oh, that person comes up, and then you can go into edit delegations. And then it brings you to this screen, and it can give you delegations for xTRAIN, the FFR, the RPPR. And basically, I don't know what your role is. Maybe you need all, you know, you need delegation for everything, then just have them select all. But in this case, I just put xTRAIN. One thing that I'll note is it doesn't have like an actual extract module there. It just, that is just kind of folded into xTRAIN. So xTRAIN, extract is interchangeable here. Okay, so we're actually gonna go in and start the appointment now. So you go up to your, you log in as yourself. I'm assuming you've all logged in before. And then scroll down to xTRAIN. And I wanted to point this out before we get into it, because this is our process, our workflow. They're gonna, if you're delegated, then the PI is creating the new appointment, right? You're gonna route it to the trainee. The trainee is gonna route it back to the PI, and then that's gonna be reviewed and sent to the agency. So these are kind of the four steps of your process. So when I log in, I get this question like, who you want to log in as, because I have delegations for many PIs. So usually, you know, if I'm doing work for Dr. Bavay, I'm, you know, I can log in as a delegator for him. Depends on, you know, if you called me with a question and you just need me to look up something really quick, I might just, you know, log in as myself. But so that will give you the option. So you go in and you to that main page, the next page, and you go under awarded grants, and you can either type in the PI last name or the grant number, which is a lot easier. It used to be you had to know exactly the serial number, and then it'll like pre-populate with the name, which is really, really super helpful. So, and then you're going to see, okay, these are awarded grants. I found my PI. Go ahead and click on the hyperlink. So one thing that I noticed with the revamp, if they had, I think they call these ellipses when you have the 3 dots. So it's either you click on the hyperlink or the ellipses. So in this case, we're clicking on the hyperlink. And then we're going to go ahead and if you can see, this is the grant year, because remember, that's the information you gathered before you started this process. You know the grant year, you know the period of support. You're like, okay, this looks right. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on Start New Appointment. And then it brings you to this form. on this screen, I should say. And you're going to go in and find your trainee. Well, because you've already done your due diligence, you already know, okay, this person has a user commons ID. So you type that in. Well, what about if when you did that before, they didn't have a user commons ID? You could have already taken the initiative and already directed them to Elizabeth, or you can actually invite them and you can send them like a little, you could click the links and send them a little invite to actually sign up. I don't know if any of you have ever had to go through the process of changing your password with NIH, but it can be a freaking nightmare sometimes. So those are like one of those stumbling blocks where you could easily get caught up and go, you know, like the person can't get access. They need to change their password. So those are all kind of things that are, you know, those stumbling blocks that can be happening in the middle of all this process. Again, if the trainee isn't listed, if the trainee is listed, you can just go ahead and click on their name, and then here comes your appointment form. And you always want to make sure you're appointing them to the correct year. And it's just because sometimes your budget years overlap with your appointment years, so it can be a bit tricky sometimes. So you just want to be sure. You look up here and go, oh, okay, no, I'm supposed to be appointing them to year 2, you know, so you might want to back out of here and go into year 2. So this is this new system and that they revamped shows you the prior NRSA support. So you're like, okay, they only have 1 year, perfect. They can have up to 3 years because this is a postdoc, great. You're going to need to know the period of appointment. Now, remember budget years versus appointment years, what we talked about last week, that your budget year may be different than the appointment year. So say the project period is 7/1/23 to 6/30/2024, I should say the budget year, but you're going to start appointing them 8/1/2023, and it's going to go till, you know, 7/31/2024. So those may different, your period of appointment may different than your budget period. And then you're going to select, say if you know the level of postdoc, you're going to go in and select level 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever here. If it's a pre-doc, they only get one stipend amount, so you just click, you know, pre-doc. So some of this information, when they went and signed up and they've got that invitation, or they already have an Area Commons account, some of that information will be updated. A lot of times it's not, but sometimes it is. So you'll have, you know, they'll have the degree information in there already. Usually you can't complete your Area Commons profile until you do like a certain amount of, you know, information there. One thing I want to mention, when either you're inviting a new trainee to be getting an Area Commons account, or they're for whatever reason, this is a good time to tell them, while you're in your Area Commons profile, do your designation for your diversity, because you need to know that diversity information in order to submit your RPPR. So I know I just skipped way ahead for some people, but that's just one of those little side things you want to kind of remember. Just tell the trainee, I know it's optional, you know, it's optional in there, but we really need you to do it. I know that sounds as wild as that sounds, but and we're going to need that at the trainee, at the RPPR point, because if not, they're going to have to go back in there at the RPPR point. You might as well just have them do it now. So continue. Oh, does someone have a question?
I just had a question, because I had that same thing happen the last RPPR, where I pulled it and there was like, I knew based on like admission records that they had like URM status and they didn't fill it out, but I didn't know if we were allowed to ask them because it's supposed to be self-survey.
I know, but yet they want to know, right? So that's the thing. Like, they can not put it in there, but then it's not going to
like
show.
We could ask them still and be like, hey, like they pull this like diversity information as a part of like assessing the grant. Like, could you fill it out? Like, and just like leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like catch-22s, right, Kylie? Like, you say, well, we need this information, but yet we can't require you to fill it out. But the problem is they cannot fill it out, but then your training diversity report, say you had 5 URMs on your grant, and only 4 of them decided to declare, and then that information is going to get sent to the agency, and you're not going to get credit for 5, right? So it's really important that they do that. I mean, it's important for the grant. So
they're not going to like sue us or anything.
I'm sorry. What'd you
There's
say?
no like legal issues if we do that.
I haven't run into any yet, but yeah, no,
okay.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure someone could complain, but I don't know. No one's done a formal complaint yet. Remember that I told you, okay, so this is still that same form. It's just a really long form, and I couldn't put it on one screen. I asked you have to look up the field of research training or career development code. And so, you know, there's different ones in here, cancer oncology, whatever. This one, to be honest with you, I just cheat and I go and look at other prior submissions and what they put in there, you know, because sometimes it's very specific, it's systems biology or whatever, but you know, I don't know what they do with this data. It's just probably just, you know, statistical data. So it's not going to make or break you if you put the wrong code in here. You're not to put the graduation level. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Carla. So I was reappointing people earlier this week, and it's interesting that this information doesn't carry forward. So, which is a pain, because then if you go into, if you're doing a reappointment and you pull down their previous form, it's not even on the previous form. So I would suggest to people, maybe have a spreadsheet so that you can like quickly, I mean, I know our people, but you know, there were a couple new, and so you had to fill it out, but
yeah, it's just one of those things, like you're in the middle of doing this form and you're like, oh my gosh, I need this piece of information, and where do I get it, you know? And then you're just sitting there going, okay, at least now, if you see at the bottom that you can save as a draft, which is helpful.
yes,
I don't think you could do that before, and then you're just sitting there going, okay, you know, I have to, that's my NIH voice, okay, my very nasally NIH voice. Specialty boards, I don't usually ever fill this out, but sometimes if you have postdoc residents on here and they might have a dual degree. So then you saved it as a draft, and then you can review it, of course, before, go back and edit if you have to. And then you can route, now you get to route it to the trainee, and you can put little comments in here like, please fill up, please do this. I don't know. I would personally make it personable to them, because otherwise they're just going to see another notification in their email inbox and they're going to ignore it. And why do I know that? Because I do it all the time. And I'm delegation. I have delegation of authority for so many training grants on the campus. And I see these come in and I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that. But if someone put a little personal note in there, hey, Jill, can you take care of this for me? It might catch my attention. So that's why I like to use the comments. And then you're going to go ahead and just route it to the trainee. So remember how I was saying you do your portion, it goes to the trainee, and now then they're going to have to route it back to the PI, and then the PI is going to have to route it to the agency. So here you got your success screen, the good old success screen. And I say that because sometimes it's red and you have to take care of warning errors. So, and then they have this really cool thing that they've always had. You can see the routing history. So you can see when it was sent to the trainee, and then, you know, if it's just sitting in their queue, they need to take some action. Maybe you need to send them a little nudge email saying, could you please take care of this? And, you know, always, I would like, you know, hold the carrot and say, do you want to get paid? You know, that kind of thing. So of course we're going to pay them, but you know what I mean? Just kind of do that as an incentive. So it's also important to remember, because like a lot of you have your hands in xTRAIN too. If you're doing those RPPRs, all the information that you put in xTRAIN is going to appear. Those names are going to sync up to xTRAIN. So just something, you know, to keep in your mind, the back of your mind. So now the trainee, they're going to get that email and they're going to need to log in. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, I forgot my password. Then they're going to have to, get a new password or for whatever reason, and, you know, reset that. And then they're going to go in, they're going to fill out what they need to fill out, and they're going to route it back to the PI. And then you're going to receive an email that's saying this has been reviewed and completed by the trainee, and it's getting routed back to you. So it's going to be one of those emails, you get your inbox, and you're probably going to ignore it. If you're one of those people like me, then you're going to have to put like a calendar, something in your calendar saying, okay, you know, I have to process these appointments or whatever, put it on your tickler, your to-do list that I need to continue. I started the process in xTRAIN, but it needs to be, you know, the workflow has to go all the way through the channels. So if you log back in, it would say appointments in progress, and you could click on that. And then basically I like to review everything one last time because I'm, you know, a little crazy. And then you can go ahead and route it to the agency, certify and route to the agency. So, and then postdocs, something will come up for postdocs, and that payback agreement will be like filled out with the name. You want to print that, have them sign that, and send that back in. And then remember, pre-docs don't have any other, they don't have a payback agreement, so they don't have anything to, else they have to do here. Unless, of course, there's a permanent residency, which could be pre-doc or post-doc. And that, until the agency receives their notarization of their green card, they will be considered in progress agency progress or something like that. So here, I think this is pending agency review. That's what it is. So there's different statuses that you'll see when you're in xTRAIN. And like one of them, if you're waiting for a payback agreement, you could see, okay, this has been submitted, but we're waiting for the payback agreement. So it's still saying pending agency review or that permanent residency, or it could be on hold by the agency. Or again, it could say in progress PI, in progress trainee, accepted. So basically you want to submit, and then you want, as far as the appointment stage, you want to get all the way to accepted here. And then eventually, you know, after they spend a year on the training grant, then you're going to get to do the termination portion. So there's different appointment statuses. So I wanted to give you this overall look. This is kind of how it looks. And as far as the the PDPI starts, they choose the trainee. You could be delegated to go in and start that appointment. You put all that appointment information in there, you route to the trainee. They fill out their little portion, and then they route it back to the PDPI, and then they review it and submit to the agency. So there's this whole workflow thing in there, and it gets stuck sometimes because people we're busy and people ignore things. So you might have to go in there and as I'm newly married. I got married last October, so I'm learning how to nag appropriately. So I've had a lot of experience working at UCSD, learning how to nag. So now I get to nag my husband. So one of the things I was like, honey, you have to spray for ants. It's driving me effing crazy. So anyway, he literally just walked in here like 5 minutes ago. He's like, I just want you to know I sprayed for ants. I'm like, thank you, honey. I gotta go. Anyway, sorry. Anyway.
Great.
So I have a couple of FAQs here. At what point can I use xTRAIN to make appointments for a new budget year? So now, Amy, this happened to you. This just happened to the Big Grant. And Mike, your PI was like, why can't I do this? And I said, well, because you haven't received your notice of award yet. Once you receive your notice of award, then you can go ahead and start the xTRAIN process. So that's just one of those things where you may see like, oh, it's showing year 28 and we're going into year 29. Why can't I start that appointment? So another good question. So does the PDPI delegate and if a PD, PI delegates authority to an assistant, do they get all the same perks, right? No. Remember, they cannot submit appointment forms or termination forms to the agency. So that has to be done by the PI. They can delegate you to do all that other busy work, but they actually have to be the one to do that. Unless, of course, they give you a login, but then again, I don't want to know anything about that. So this one comes up occasionally. I'm appointed a new trainee for a new fiscal year, but the stipend drop-down menu is only providing me the old stipend amount. Remember I was saying last week, usually they have new NRSA stipend amounts that come out around January, February every year. But depending when your award was made, and the NIH, their fiscal year ends 9/30, I believe. So it's not on the 7/1, 6/30 fiscal year. And so sometimes your award is made off of last year funds, or it's made on this year funds. So you could be in year 2023, right? We know the stipend levels for 2023 have come out. However, your award was made with 2022 funds. And so you need to use those stipend levels. So that's something that comes up quite a bit. You know, you may forget this little nuance, but if you and just email me or whatever and just say, hey, you know, why am I getting the old stipend rates? So, and that's one of the reasons why. So resources, again, this is all gonna be on the website. And I'm actually gonna get out of here and I'll kind of just show you the website. So, you know, all I'm doing here is just regurgitating what is on the NIH website. So the NIH actually has some pretty cool videos you can watch, just all about just appointments, just terminations. But the thing I found the most important is this, and it was actually just recently updated, is it walks you through screen by screen how to set up a trainee, and even like puts little notes in here, you know, and everything. So I have a link on, where's my website, under trainees. Oops, under post-award, wait, under trainees, xTRAIN, excuse me, I don't even know my own website. You go to appointments, and then you can go click on that step by step guide. And that will bring you to this page, and it just goes straight into appointments, and you can go in to create a new appointment. So if you're brand new to the game and you need some pointers, you can always, my slides are going to be online. But you know, if you just, this is a quick way to look. If you do a Google search, it comes right up. So
Jill, quick question. I just got an email this morning. We're appointing somebody to our grant. And we were gonna, I just got an email that said that she was on another fellowship. And that fellowship ends 8/15/23. So the PI is saying ideally we appoint her 8/16/23 to ours. Is there's nothing that says you have to do the beginning of the month or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay. So
you're doing but Carla, you have pre-docs or post-docs? That remind me. Both. Is this a pre-doc or a post-doc?
Pre-doc.
Okay. Because it's 8/15, I think it's probably going to be okay. Because if it was like 10/15 in the middle of the academic year, it could be slightly different, right? Because of the tuition and fees. So I think it's probably okay. Generally speaking, it's, if you want to keep yourself more, you know, organized, I think it's better to have it on the first day of the month.
Right.
But, you know, I think because it's a summer month, I think it's fine. Okay. But yes, you could do that. And then there's like basically, you know, no break in service, but it's probably easier just to start 8/16 because they already had a fellow. They're already a fellow on a different fund sort, like a different award.
JDP. And what's weird is that she's got funding for, I can't, I don't recall exactly, but like she's got funding for years 1 and 3, but not 2 and 4 or something. So
Oh,
it's even a
interesting.
little more, yeah, it's even going to be a little more complicated, but
Yeah.
I had originally, we had a meeting earlier this week. As I said, we appointed a bunch of people and we had chosen September 1st, but then the PI just emailed this morning and
Yeah,
said,
because especially with the JDPs, right? I don't think they're guaranteed support, are they?
I don't,
I think
yeah.
they're guaranteed support by San Diego State, right? But
Mhm.
so anyway, you would have to go find another fund source for those 2 weeks. That's kind of a pain, right? So
Yeah.
it's better just to do a smooth transition to 815. And
Mhm.
you could contact GEPA grad division to make sure,
Okay.
because but I'm pretty sure it's okay.
Yeah.
So anybody else have questions for me? No? And everybody's hiding off camera? Wow. Kristen's like, I'm here. Oh wait, I'm here.
I have a question and
I
I
thought you
haven't
guys
had
were all
time.
like shoveling your lunch and maybe you're like, okay.
I need to eat my lunch still. So I don't know, I haven't looked at this yet. We have some I'm taking over the training grants in our department, and I've noticed that some of the terminated appointments, we claimed we paid them out this amount, but they actually weren't because they were, on leave and all that.
Hmm.
What do I need? Do I need to resubmit or change that? And like, what's the repercussions?
Yeah, so well, first of all, it's really good to see you, Kristen.
You too.
Did you go to Comic-Con last weekend?
I did.
I know.
Which
You
one?
guys
I
are
saw
nerds.
Rachel's.
You guys are self-proclaimed nerds. I'm sure there's everybody. I mean, I stay as far away from downtown San Diego Comic-Con weekend. I'd rather be at the racetrack because the racetrack opened last weekend.
That would be fun.
Anyway, technically, yes, you should. I know you don't want to hear that. So this is the important thing as a business official. People think you could just, that they don't have to like do that reconciliation between our ledgers and what we told the agency, and you absolutely should. So I think the general rule is if it's under, we paid them, we said we told the agency we paid them 50,000, and you run the general ledger and it's like 50,000, $200. From what I understand, when I've been, I don't, this is one of those things that I don't think you can ever actually find in policy that from NIH, but if it's under a $500 threshold, you can consider it's okay. You could submit it because they know that there's going to be, slight variations. But if it's over that amount, and of course it depends, and it gets super tricky, right? If you're going to be doing a retro, and how old is it? Were they overpaid? Were they underpaid? Is the salary versus stipend? And it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing this a lot with the older or like the ended training grants that just, I don't know what was going on, but things haven't been cleaned up, or like, and we had a postdoc or a pre-doc that was barely covered, yet we claimed we had paid them the full amount. So I know that one's going to be a big red flag. There's so much to clean up, and I wasn't sure.
You're talking about Hamilton's or?
There's going to be both.
Okay.
Gene Wang's and Hamilton's, the one that just ended, and then Gene's that ended last year. I still am trying to dig through.
Okay. Well, let me know if you need me to work with you, because I know it can get especially hairy when you have stipends and salaries, and where they, if they're overpaid, right? You can't, because the stipends don't have taxes taken out, just to review it a little bit here, you can't like retroactively say, a point. It just gets really fuzzy, right?
Yeah. And we're dealing with that too with the postdocs. I'm still working on cleaning up some of that and retroactively, and I think it'll be a matter of having ARC or Central Campus changing the earn codes because it's
Mhm.
going so far back, like
Yeah,
they
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm trying to just do my due diligence and make sure that, because I can't get things to align right now. And so
Yeah, and I would honestly, I would do your due diligence.
Yeah.
It always sucks to have to go up and clean up, but it's a great learning lesson on
Oh
the
yeah.
flip side. Now you know what not to do in the future, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you're gonna go, oh, Jill told me, please be diligent about doing that. And one thing that I just realized that I forgot to mention in this was when you have a trainee that signs up with ERA Commons, tell them, to use like their own personal Gmail account or Yahoo account, not to use their UCSD account. And the reason why I say that, excuse me, is because when you go to terminate them, and if they've already left UCSD and you email them jweller@UCSD, and it bounces back and we don't know who that person is, and then you're trying to get a hold of them and they just all of a sudden go into the ether and you can't find them. And so it's really important that you can still track down that person, especially if you, as you know, like you have to track trainees for 15 years. So after they end this grant, after when they're terminated, you're still going to have to keep them, keep tabs on them for 15 years. So it's going to be helpful to have their Gmail account so you can stalk them better. It's a little bit easier. I mean, of course, you could go to LinkedIn and try to search for them, but some people just go off the map, as you know. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that I wanted to mention. Anybody else have any weird scenarios for me, or?
I'm sure I will have more in the next.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hi, Hector. How are you?
Hi, Jill. Thank you for the presentation. That was really helpful. This is my first time processing our F30 applicants and our ultimate T32 recipients, but I'm sending a screenshot in the chat. I don't have access to xTRAIN is what it looks like.
Okay.
So
you are a neurosciences grad program, right?
yes.
Okay. So we're gonna have to get you as it's Tim Gentner. Right?
He's not our director anymore.
Oh, okay. Are you sure his name's not still in the grant?
His name is still on the grant.
Okay, so he may not be the director of the actual program anymore, but he's until they do the official change with NIH, he's gonna have to give you delegation of authority. So you'll have to either like walk him through that. I mean, sometimes you can just tell a PI, email him and say, can you give me delegation of authority? Most of the time when you send them an email like that, that's a foreign language to them. So
yes.
and especially with Tim, I like Tim, but some people just have an aversion to administration.
Oh yeah.
Or answering emails. So anyway, so he is one that you might have to. And does Erin work over there still?
She's our analyst in the central office, yes.
Okay, so Erin would be a good resource too. She has an in with Tim.
Okay.
She knows him very well. She's worked with him for years. So yeah, so that's one of those things you're going to need to get access and delegation of authority. So,
all right.
Yeah.
And then I'll get access to the xTRAIN, or?
Yeah, when he gives you access to xTRAIN, a delegation of authority, then it's going to show up as you're going to be able to do it.
Got it.
Unless, of course, your role is not correct. But let me double check your role. And actually, I'll do a share screen on this one. So you can see what I do when I go in and check someone's role. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
The screen, the ERA comments? Okay. So it's taking a while to pull up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go into admin. And I'm going to go under, actually I'm going to go into your account management. And I'm going to look here. Manuel is your last name?
Albiter, A-L, B as in boy, I-T-E-R.
I-T-E-R, Albiter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Hector. Okay. So you guys are seeing behind the scenes action today. of course, if this cooperates. Okay, so see, it pulls you up here. So I'm gonna go under manage. Oops. Going back here, it says you have that assistant role. Sorry, flipping screens. So I went into manage and then I go into manage account. So you have that assistant role. So once he gives you delegation, you should be able to do it. See how I could go in if all of a sudden I decided you know, you're the PDPI or whatever, I can assign that role to you. So
Okay.
I have power, people. Kidding. So I can revoke your power. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. So anybody
Right.
else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, so let's hopefully we can get that worked out. Nobody else? Okay, so we'll finish it off here today. I'll stay online if anybody wants to you know, talk to me directly about another type of issue, but otherwise you guys can go get ready for your next meeting at 1, I assume.
Thank you so much, Jill.
You're welcome. See you next week for terminations. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, Jill.
Bye.
Jill, I actually have an unrelated question.
Sure.
Well, kind of related. It's for the F30.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I filled out the budget correctly. I'm
So
not sure.
are you doing right now you're doing a appointment, right? No, you're doing an application.
Application, yes.
Okay, so actually because Christina asked me about this yesterday.
So Christina's abroad right now, so she's
yeah, she's in the
delegated.
Philippines, yeah.
Yes.
So the person you want to contact is Nicole Ketchum.
Okay.
Yeah, you could look her up.
Right.
Yeah, and let's see, I'll copy the email address, and she would be better off. I'm telling you. I haven't done a budget for a fellowship in years, so I wouldn't know what to tell you. So, but Nicole knows, she knows them forwards and backwards. So she's a
Okay.
great resource for the F30s and F31s and stuff.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's very nice to meet you, and
Likewise.
I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.